Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Educational Affairs meeting, the first Educational Affairs meeting of 2023. As it is a new year, a bit of housekeeping. I will remain co-chair, Leah Mulhern, and Jenny Lohman will be joining me as my other co-chair as Julie Haywood steps off. So thank you, Julie, for your assistance in onboarding me as a co-chair of the committee. I appreciate your help and support. We will get started with roll call. Ms. Haywood.
Present.
Mr. Epps.
Present.
Mr. Cohen.
Present.
Mr. Schultz.
Present.
And Ms. Lohman. Awesome. And myself, Leah Mulhern, also present.
And Ms. Henry present.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Our Madam President, I totally spaced. Pam Henry is also present. Thank you. Moving on to the minutes. You should have received the minutes from the last Ed Affairs meeting in December, and so I will take the motion to approve.
So moved.
Ms. Henry.
Second.
Mr. Epps. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Thank you. And to note, Mr. Burdell Williams has joined us. Thank you. We are just beginning. And we will move on. We have two presentations tonight. The first will be an update from Ms. Jessica Keene, our Director of Student Services, and she will, and Mr. Fishbein is also joining us, just for the record. Ms. Keene?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right, so as we start all of our educational affairs meetings, we are going to emphasize our mission and vision statement, as all of our work in the Office of Education is to assist in the completion and the fruition of our mission and vision. So I'm excited to talk with you all this evening about our social emotional supports and our health and wellness within our district, provide you all with an update on some of our pre-existing initiatives and how we've enhanced those, as well as some of the new things that we have implemented this school year. So to start us off, I wanted to give you guys an update on the Wellness Committee meeting that was held last spring on May 19th. Our committee members included myself, Megan Carrier, who's a dietitian from Jefferson Hospital, Stephanie Irani, our nurse at Cedar Brook Middle School, Lauren King Baxter, who is a community member, a parent in the district, and who also owns a mental health agency, and Joshua Grady, who is a Cheltenham High School student and also my cousin. I'm fortunate to be a part of the committee, but he was a local So within that meeting, we talked about the food service bids. We reviewed the different contractors that applied for the bid to be our food service provider. Different RFPs. We also talked about the PDE wellness assessment. It was reviewed. So the wellness assessment allows us to take a look at our previous food service provider and some of the nutrition education that they were providing to students and some of the initiatives that they brought to the district. So we kind of took a look into that to see where they shined and some things that we would have liked to see improvement upon. A little bit challenging because it was during the pandemic, but we did kind of pull on some of the things that they did prior to schools closing. We talked about in-school mental health supports as we had a very good panel to kind of hone in on that discussion with, especially with Ms. Kane Baxter, who has her own agency and children within the district. So we talked about some of the new things we implemented last school year, and we talked about some things that we would like to see for this school year that we're currently in. And we talked about healthy nutrition for our athletes, which was an idea by Joshua Grady, how we can educate our athletes on what's appropriate and what's not. So with the help of Ms. Carrier, we created this healthy nutrition flyer for our athletes. It talks about some misconceptions and myths, especially around like protein powder and the different sports drinks and how they're kind of filled with sugar. And the best way to stay healthy while you're in your training is natural supplements. So actually water and not the Gatorades and the protein powders and nuts and fruits. So this was provided to our new athletic director at the beginning of the school year to distribute to our sports, to our student athletes, just to keep them healthy during their training. And to provide you with a health update, it's a lot different from last year. There was a lot of different policies and changes as it pertained to COVID, and this year things have I would say somewhat resumed back to normal. The CDC, along with the Montgomery County Office of Public Health, we're treating COVID as if it's the flu or any other infectious disease, and so there isn't as much attention put on it. I think our nurses are well equipped to deal with it. They have their test kits, they're testing students as needed, and sending students home as if they would any other student who's exhibiting some illness within the school buildings. So with that, it's a brief health update today. Last school year, we embarked on a new partnership for our district-wide position. We are now utilizing the Black Doctors Consortium. We received such positive feedback in the spring of last school year when those physicians did the physicals for our students that were in need. Very positive from the students, very positive from the staff, very professional. So we're excited that this partnership has continued into this school year. One thing that we're doing a little differently this year, we have consistently struggled with compliance and getting physicals for our students. Physicals are required for kindergartners, any new student to the district, 6th graders and 11th graders. And that has been a challenge in making sure that our parents are providing us with that documentation. So in an effort to try to decrease our numbers that aren't in compliance, we decided this year to offer the physicals twice per school year. So we'll also be doing them in the spring, but we'll be having them in February of this year as well. So anybody that came in this year and we didn't have that documentation, they were offered the opportunity to get the free physical in February of this school year. Another update is that we changed our standing order procedure. So in years past, a student that needed any type of pain medication, Tylenol, Motrin, we would need to get a parent's permission in that moment. We were able to get a standing order from the Black Doctors Consortium for 7th and 12th graders that as long as the parent consents in the beginning of the school year, they're allowed to get that pain medication throughout the year. We don't have to get permission in that moment. So as you can imagine, that definitely alleviated a barrier to providing our students with minor medical care while they're in the buildings. So I want to talk with you a little bit about some of our social emotional curriculum. Some of this we started last year, some is new to this year. We talked about Second Step a little bit last year. We have a 3-year license with them, so we're going on year 2 with this digital license. It is a classroom-based social emotional learning curriculum for students in kindergarten to grade 8. Is being utilized by our K-4 counselors. When they do their lessons with students, they will pull some of the lessons from our Second Step curriculum. It looks a little different in grade 8 because it's more teacher facilitated and it's web-based. So our counselors have had the training in Second Step and for our 7th through 8th building and have been utilizing that as well. There are a select amount of special education teachers, emotional support teachers that have also received the training for Second Step. We would like to expand, definitely getting some of our teachers at Elkins Park trained in Second Step that are in the emotional support classrooms. So as we embark on the 3rd year of that license, we will be continuing to train our staff so we can have as many as possible that are utilizing that platform. Something that we implemented new this school year is Too Good for Drugs. Instead, we like to call it Too Good because it really is a social emotional learning platform for students. It teaches them how to identify their emotions in a way that leads to them making healthy decisions for themselves as they get older. So that's kind of why it's called Too Good for Drugs. I was fortunate enough to be able to participate in a lesson at Elkins Park. Our 4th grade students in our K-4 buildings are participating, and our 5th grade students at Elkins Park are participating. Within a lesson that I was able to observe, they talked about identifying your emotions, and they talked about how there's levels to certain emotions. Sad, angry, there's different ways you can describe it, identifying where you are on the level of severity of how you feel, and then appropriate coping skills to manage that particular emotion. I was surprised. The kids were really engaged. They enjoyed it, raising their hands, providing examples. And then in the end, they were able to do a role play, which I believe they do often with this particular curriculum, where the kids kind of put on a performance. And so each of them had a role. They really got into it and enjoyed themselves. But I think that this is going to be a good way for us to teach our students to make better decisions for themselves, not to follow the crowd as it pertains to drug and alcohol use. Today during our safety committee meeting, they talked about how a lot of times school districts will bring presenters in at 11th and 12th grade. And at that point, it's kind of too late where we need to be implementing these types of programs in younger grades. Then, as Cheltenham, we've been kind of forward thinking and introducing this into our classrooms in 4th and 5th grade. And just so you know, this is being facilitated by Aldersgate. So we have really expanded our partnership with Aldersgate this school year using county funds as well as private pay dollars. So they have facilitators that are doing this program within our buildings. So we have also implemented 3 new mentoring groups in our school buildings. They are primarily at Cedarbrook Middle School and Cheltenham High School. The first one is Make the Distinction. This program is facilitated by a Cheltenham graduate, Ms. Alex Ingram. She is seeing groups at Cedarbrook as well as at the high school. Her group is geared towards Black females and helping them to navigate the world in regards to self-esteem and confidence and what they present, as well as what we all know is an issue, social media awareness and how they're presenting themselves on those social media platforms. We also have the Girls Achieve program, which is facilitated by Ms. Eleanor Jean Headley. That program is running out of Cedarbrook Middle School. It's a flexible series with life skills and teaching young ladies how to identify what they want to do going forward and the steps to get there. So if you say you want to be a doctor, she kind of really hones in on what you need to do education-wise to get to that goal. So that is another program and another person that we're working with at Cedarbrook Middle School. And then Baseline Hoops is with our assistant athletic director, Mr. Torrey Harrison. He's operating out of Cedarbrook as well as the high school. I've heard really great feedback in regards to his groups. The young men that are participating are consistent and they are enjoying the lessons that he's providing. He kind of focuses a little bit on student athletes. I think that's his wheelhouse, but teaching them how to be stellar student athletes as well as excelling in their academics. So all these programs we will be continuing in the spring. They all had a fall cohort. I believe Torrey is going to continue with the students that he was currently working with. Make the Distinction and Girls Achieve. We'll be working with a new set of girls as we go. As we go into the spring. So this kind of goes in line with our strategic plan. So I needed to do a resource review in each of our buildings. So what better opportunity than for our presentation tonight? So we'll go through what social emotional supports we have in each of our buildings and how they're being utilized. Building by building, K through 4 is lumped together because they have the same programs running in their buildings. So starting with Cheltenham High School, we have our mental health and wellness counselor. Currently, our mental health and wellness counselor has 30 students on their caseload, but that does not begin to touch the amount of students that they actually encounter throughout the school year. There are a lot of drop-ins, crisis situations, mediation that our mental health and wellness counselor has to deal with on a daily basis. We are lucky enough, fortunate enough to have Dr. Horsey filling in this position this school year. I would say she's loving it. And they really enjoy having her there. She has been an asset to the students at the high school. Mr. Turan, who is a mental health and wellness counselor, was filling in for Lori Cohen, who's out on sabbatical for the first half of the school year. So when Lori returns back at the end of this month, Mr. Turan will go back to his role as a mental health and wellness counselor, and we are keeping Dr. Horsey over there as well, just to provide some additional support. She has really developed a rapport, especially with some of our young ladies. So we want to keep her over there. She's really great at the mediations. So I think she'll continue to be an asset as the year ends over at the high school. Something new that we are working on this year that is getting started this week, and I'm really excited about it, is the Student Adolescent Mood Project. This is a research-based project out of CHOP. They reached out last school year to start their program at Cheltenham. They can work out of other school districts as well. So the goal of this particular organization is to find students that are borderline depressive disorder, not yet diagnosed, but borderline and exhibiting some of the symptoms, and then provide them with intensive group therapy via telehealth for a 10-week time frame. So throughout the beginning of this school year, They are participating in back to school nights, and we've had almost weekly communication with parents in regards to signing their students up for the program. As of today, we have 38 consent forms for our students. They are doing their screening this coming Thursday, the 19th at the high school, where they're going to be meeting with all 38 students that they have consent forms for. They're going to do a depression screen. As long as the students fall within the round for the service, then they will start the program. I think they're looking for about 6 to 10 students to actually participate, and they will start the therapy session. If there's any student that they screen that actually does meet the level of depression, then they're going to let the student's counselor know. And then if we need to involve our social workers, we will get that student some outside support to provide them with what they need. And as stated, we have Make the Distinction at the high school. So right now we have 12 students that were referred. Baseline Hoops, we have 10 students that are working with that program. In the fall of this school year, we partnered with Laurel House as well as Cheltenham Communities That Care to bring a healthy relationships program to the high school. They worked with some of our fall sports teams. We weren't able to get all of them, but we were able to work with about 2 or 3 of the sports teams in the fall. It was a very well-received program by the students. It teaches them about what healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationship looks like. And they do that through scenarios and stories. One of the activities they did was they would read from cue cards and all the students would stand up. So when the student felt like the relationship was going from healthy to unhealthy, they would sit down. And so for the winter, Mr. Pat Fleury worked really hard to get as many winter sports teams as possible to participate in this. I know Cheltenham Communities That Care was very impressed with how many students they were able to reach. Definitely something that we would like to continue because I think it's good information and education for our students to learn about how to maintain a healthy relationship and what an unhealthy relationship looks like. And then lastly, we had the Safe Harbor Grief Group for our young student that passed away tragically at the high school. We were able to identify the students that were most impacted by that loss. We reached out to Safe Harbor and they did a group for about 5 students. They met with them once a week for about 4 weeks and provided them with that grief support. And their Safe Harbor has been a partner with us for quite some time. And they stated if the students needed anything after the sessions were over to, feel free to reach out to them. So I felt like that was a good service to kind of help them to process their grief. At Cedarbrook Middle School, we have our mental health and wellness counselor who currently sees 25 students on her caseload. We have the Make the Distinction program that has 35 students referred. The Girls Achieve mentoring group, 14 students referred. The Baseline Hoops mentoring group, 38 students referred. And then our counselor, Mr. Kyrie Blackman, has his own mentoring group from the Beacon Leadership Program, and he currently has 35 students that participate in that program. At Elkins Park, we have our Student Assistance Program Liaison, so a staff liaison. One thing that we were excited to do this year was to provide staff liaisons in all of our buildings. So they are there 1 day a week, a day and a half at Cedarbrook and the high school, and they provide additional mental health support. So it can look different in the upper levels because they do have some focus on drugs and alcohol. On the lower level, it's more so mental health, but we do have that support once a week. So at Elkins Park, we have 16 students that are referred for our SET liaison. Second step access, as I mentioned, our counselors and our ES teachers at Elkins Park have that access. And then they're participating in the Too Good for Drugs program through the 5th grade classrooms. And then Safe Harbor group, there are 17 students referred. I have to shout out Sid Smith because Safe Harbor has worked with us for many years. And this year decided that they needed to take their services to other school districts. So they didn't want to necessarily come back. And Sid was very persistent and made them come back so that they could service our students. There's definitely a need for grief and loss at Elkins Park, and she really advocated and was able to bring them back so they can assist our students. So in our K-4 buildings, we now have a SAC liaison, a student assistance program liaison, in all of our K-4 buildings. That individual is there 1 day per week, and then also providing the Too Good for Drugs lessons. We have a school-based outpatient clinic through Child and Family Focus. This one has been, I would say, not without its challenges. So we are not, I guess, we're having the same struggles staffing as everyone else is. So where the service is great and it's great to offer to our families, they haven't been consistent with clinicians, and not necessarily their fault. We'll have a clinician, the clinician will leave in 2 weeks, and then we have to staff it again. So we've been a little bit a slower go with trying to get this outpatient clinic up and running. Another roadblock to it is the medical assistance piece. For Child and Family Focus, you need medical assistance to participate. If you have your own insurance along with medical assistance, which many families do if their student has a diagnosis, they cannot participate in the service, which has been a roadblock. But having the SAP liaison there has been a buffer, because then those students can be referred to the SAP liaison for, it's called Mental Health 3. It's 3 hours of mental health support. When you have the younger grades, you break it down into 6 sessions, and it's just a half hour each session. So we've been able to utilize them where we haven't been able to refer students to Child and Family Focus. And again, we have second step access, and our elementary counselors have been really diligent in utilizing that platform. Too Good for Drugs. And then we did a Safe Touches program through Victim Services in the beginning of the school year. I believe it was our 3rd or 4th grade classrooms, and they all received that lesson in the beginning of the year. And we're currently working with that organization to bring the Safe Touches program to Elkins Park. So this is just a number of referrals for each of these programs. So for Cheltenham Elementary, 6 students have been referred to Child and Family Focus, and 16 for the SAP liaison. We have 1 student referred and 23 for the SAP liaison. Myers, 6 students for Child and Family Focus and 6 students for the SAP liaison. And Wincote, 15 for Child and Family Focus and 8 for the SAP liaison. And so this is just an overview of how many counselors we have in each of our buildings and what services they provide. So at Cheltenham Elementary, for all of our K through 4, we have 1 grade level counselor. Then we have a Lakeside counselor. We've continued our partnership with Lakeside to provide support for our students with IEPs that have counseling goals, and a lot of times emotional support students. They will see our Lakeside counselors for groups or individual. And then we have the Student Assistance Program liaison at all of our elementary schools. One thing that we did a little differently this year, as I moved to Elkins Park, our Lakeside counselor, who works strictly out of Cedarbrook, has been lending assistance at Elkins Park. That caseload can be pretty high. So she sees the students that have group, and the other one sees the students that have individual, just to help balance that caseload a little bit. So at Elkins Park, we have 2 grade level counselors, technically 2 Lakeside counselors, and the staff counselor. At Cedarbrook, 2 grade level counselors, the Lakeside counselor, and the mental health and wellness counselor. And at Cheltenham High School, we have 6 counselors with the Lakeside counselor and the mental health and wellness counselor. I just wanted to highlight some of the work that our social workers, Jen Mosier and Michelle Horsey, have been doing this school year. The fall is definitely a busy time in regards to supporting our families. So for the Thanksgiving basket drive, we once again partnered with the Glenside Rotary Club, and we were able to service 75 families. I know Jen works really hard to get those lists together, contacting the counselors in the different schools to see who would be in need. And I know each of our school buildings does do a canned food drive to help supplement what's in those Thanksgiving baskets. So for the holidays, we serviced 68 families. We partnered once again with the Rotary Club, Calvary Presbyterian Church, and KI Synagogue. They provided gifts, they provided gift cards. And what I will say is that the gift cards are invaluable when it comes to providing services for our families. When we have conversations on the phone with them, we realize that they're in need. It is so easy to give them something tangible to show them that, you know, their school district is supporting them and here to support them. For our refugee support, we've had 35 new students from the Russia and Ukraine area kind of migrate to this particular area. And I will say that our social workers and just our overall team has gone above and beyond to support them. From the time they reach out for registration, we're bringing them in. If they're not able to access registration online, we're bringing them into the building, utilizing our own computers, helping them to get the documents, We pay for translation services to make sure that we're able to get their transcripts and report cards translated properly so that they're in the right grades. I know Jen has been providing them with all kinds of services, coats, clothing, their Christmas gifts. She even went as far as to go to someone's home and put the play yard together for the child. So they have really gone above and beyond to support this student. So you guys know how we're representing the district, and it's that we care and we want them to feel as comfortable as possible as they leave the situation that wasn't as comfortable for them. And that is all I have. You guys have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Keene. I will open it for board questions. So Ms. Haywood.
I just really have a comment and a question. Thank you very much for this presentation. It's really helpful and it clearly demonstrates how caring your counselors are and the services that you provide to our students. So thank you. One question I had was for the slide where you have the number of the counseling services by school. So when I look at the number of counselors, should I be adding up the middle column and the far right column? Okay. That was my question. Thank you. And do you feel like we have enough? I mean, we don't have it one check, right? But we also want to, as a board member, we want to make sure that our students are appropriately serviced. And so in terms of what the counseling team is seeing and the services that we're able to provide, are there additional services that you think are needed?
I think, of course, you always want to, you want an abundance of, services to support our students. But I think that's where we have to get kind of creative. Do I think we have enough to do what they're supposed to do? Yes. But that's why we bring in like the SAM project or we have liaisons to kind of provide that additional layer of support.
Thank you.
Mr. Gunn.
Thank you very much for the report, and it's good to hear about the good work being done. Just for clarification purposes, for the standing order for medication, I assume that's just over-the-counter medication?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. That's all. Thank you.
Just for like Tylenol, regular pain medication.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So this is really, really great information. Thank you so much. And you did such a great job, just like giving us all the details. So that was really well. In terms of like with parents and students, what kind of feedback are you hearing from parents and students that are receiving these services?
Pretty good feedback. I know when we can get Child and Family Focus up and running, it is a great service. I mean, they don't just service Cheltenham students, they service this overall area. So once they're actually linked to it, it's just that roadblock in between with the insurance. But once they're into it, we're receiving really good feedback. Very good feedback in regards to our SAP liaisons because they're there, they're in the building and it's convenient. The child goes when it's convenient for the child and they're getting that additional support. So we haven't received any negative feedback once we're actually able to get them into the services.
I saw Mr. Schultz.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for this presentation as well. It's really great information. I know that I will start. I don't know this. Are these positions, especially the Lakeside positions, are any of them funded through ESSER funds? Do you know?
So our increased SAP liaisons, that is funded through ESSER funds. Lakeside, we've had a partnership with them that predates me even being in the district. So that's out of the district's general fund. But we are using ESSER funds for our mentor groups as well as the SAP liaisons, the addition in the elementary buildings.
Got it. And part of why I'm asking is as we have access to those right now, and then obviously in a couple of years we'll want to be reflecting on from a general budget perspective, can we maintain that level of service? And hopefully the answer will be yes. But I just want to put that on the table and radar for future planning. A question around the difference between like a Lakeside service versus an in-house staffed service. I'm curious if there's a preference between the two. I could see there being pros and cons, but what are is this sort of the model that you're hoping Cheltenham will maintain for the next, X years, or do you potentially see need for a reflection or a shift there?
I
In terms
think
of
the
bringing more
model has-
services in-house?
I think the model has worked thus far in regards to how we partner with Lakeside. And I think that it's more cost effective to contract that particular position out, just because of benefits and, so it just makes more sense for us to continue that partnership. It is definitely cost effective at this point. So we have, along with Allison, we have clearly delineated which students see Lakeside counselors as opposed to which ones see our mental health and wellness counselors. So I wouldn't necessarily want to disrupt that flow at this point, as our counselors and case managers are kind of getting used to how they're supposed to be writing that into students' IEPs.
Great, thank you very much.
How does Effective School Solutions fit into all of this?
That was a one-year contract that we utilized last school year.
Okay, so they're not in the bill. Thank you. You talked about private pay with respect to one of the social working services, but how does it work with the doctors doing physicals? Are we paying for that, or the
Yes.
district is paying for that? Okay. And the last thing, that story about
Jen Mosier.
Jen Mosier working with the Ukrainian refugees is new to me. And I pay attention to everything that we talk about in the district, and I did not know that. I'm suggesting to you that we should talk to Kevin about that, because that's a story that should be told. Shocked to hear it, thrilled to hear it, love to tell it.
Absolutely.
I got a couple questions. First, thank you again.
And thank you. It's just wonderful what you're all that you're doing.
It is good. My first question is just in regards to how we're applying the services. Like, are all of our counselors, we say, do they bring something different, or are they very much so, aligned with the same specific focus? And do we find ourselves where, like, hey, we're in like this really high demand for a specific service today? I'm not going to be able to specify exactly what that service is, but let's say that we have a number of children who have identified in one way or another that they're experiencing some significant amount of family loss or depression. How do we like navigate that space? Do we have like first level type interventions, or again, or do we have counselors who are more like jacks of all trades and they can kind of do everything?
Yeah, I would say that they each bring their own perspectives to certain situations. So some are stronger in some areas and some are stronger in others. But that's why they work in teams. It's really interesting because the groups that have two, they kind of have opposite strengths. So that really works in their favor. But what I will say is they all kind of work toward the same goal. And as far as like the level of intervention, they all know what services are available at their fingertips. If it kind of goes above them, that's when it comes to our social workers. And that's when we need some outside support and services. And that's where our social workers kind of come in. And then if it becomes too much for them, then it comes to me. And then I try to figure out how we can support the family. So they all kind of understand that, not hierarchy, but the different tiers of support. They know what they can handle and when it needs to be referred up.
And then that kind of leads into the second question, which I think was sort of aligned with Julie's question. If we have like those different levels, right, where we have our counselors and we have our social workers, and then clearly makes it up to you, is there any place in particular where there would be an opportunity for need? Is it in the social work space? Would it be with our counselors? Like, right, are we finding that we have a lot more referrals in our social workers, or
No, I don't think there's an uptick in referrals. And this year, I've been very intentional with keeping record of, it's called emergency report forms. We talked about that in the strategic plan as well. I've been kind of keeping them and keeping a spreadsheet. There hasn't been an uptick in like crisis situations. So the one thing I would say would be helpful is more crisis intervention training for our counselors. So when those situations do arrive building level, they can manage it at that first level while we're waiting for a service like mobile crisis to come in. Or as we just learned, the IU now has like a mobile crisis team as well, that they are kind of advertising quicker response times and then more follow through. So if we're able to utilize their service, they're able to manage that crisis in that moment. And so we are kind of working on that. Our professional development in the beginning of the school year was geared towards them being able to handle those baseline crisis situations.
Got it. For the counselors, it was okay. Got it. Okay, thank you for that. My last question is just in regards to the two programs from EP that I know are very student oriented. So one was the leadership program that Sid Smith, I know, is running in the other rooms. Pride. I just didn't see them mentioned, and so I was just wondering.
So I kind of
What
focused more on the
relationship?
ones where I
That's what-
kind of brought them
Yep,
in
okay,
and not
yep.
like the building level.
Okay, great. Yep, that's what I was curious about, just the fact that it wasn't there. And I know that, they do serve, some fairly large student populations. With Fidelity, for what it seems. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Bowman.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It's really helpful to have all this information and see what is going on in each building. Trying to get the sort of the larger question, I don't know how to phrase this. One of the reasons why we had Effective School Solutions was I believe Dr. Corsi had them come in and kind of do a review of what was needed in the district, and some of what was needed was like second tier sort of support, so that we didn't have to keep sending kids out of district in various places. And so kind of wondering how this all sort of fits in, and maybe it's part of the strategic planning process, how this all sort of fits in with like MTSS and kind of where we're going with that.
It all kind of fits in. So I didn't mention in the presentation, but for the first year, we now have our own gen ed behavior specialists. So whereas before we shared them with special ed, now we have our own that's able to provide that tier 2 level of support. So they're able to do behavior observations, and then if need be in FBA, but that's more like a tier 3 level. We're also going to be facilitating groups with our new BCBA. They're like social emotional groups. So we're kind of working on what that looks like in each of our school buildings. So as you all know from the strategic plan, one of my major goals is to not overhaul, but really fine tune our MTSS process. And so with that, the next step is we are going to be developing as a district our advanced tiers, which includes tier 2 and tier 3. And so that's looking at what we already have and how we're able to streamline that into our tier 2 and tier 3 level of supports, and then what we actually need to bring in. So that's a part of that endeavor that we're working on this school year.
Okay, that helps me see the whole picture. Thank you. I appreciate that. Understand that. I just have some specific questions because I know you had probably a time limit that you needed to fill or not go over. So the second step is, can you just explain to me sort of how that is it all computer based, or how does it work? I don't.
So it's computer based for the facilitators. So like our counselors have a login. So they go in, and then if they look up a lesson on bullying, then it gives them a whole lesson on bullying that they can then present to the students. So our counselors in our elementary level are utilizing that for classroom-based lessons. So for the K through 8, it would be more web-based for them because they're more so on their Chromebooks during the classroom time. So they would be able to utilize those lessons more independently on their Chromebooks, and still teacher-led, but just digital.
Okay, I didn't understand. Thank you for explaining that. Just trying to understand how that actually works. And then I have another question, but I don't know how to ask it without later. And then the SAP liaisons, are they district employees? Where do they come from? They come from Alders. They come from Alders. Okay. And are they? You said we are using grant. How are we paying for them?
So part of it is county funded, and then for the K through 4 buildings, we're using private pay, and that's through ESSER.
When you say using private pay, I don't understand.
So that means that we're paying for them as a district, so it's
Okay.
private pay, it's not through the county funded.
Okay. Got it. All right, I think those were, like I said, I have a couple more questions, but I'm gonna.
Meeting's not over yet. But, yeah.
Can give you some time. I'll also reiterate the appreciation for the update, and also encouraged, because as you were talking, I was thinking through, oh, this was mentioned in the strategic plan. So I'm encouraged that you're bringing it all together as well for us and the public. Also, just as an anecdote, one of my children is in a classroom that received a student, and they came home and they're like, oh, we're getting a student. They're coming from Russia. They don't speak English, but we know we've been prepared. There's going to be, I think, somebody else in the classroom. So I had already started, I was like, okay, what's happening? But that was for my 7-year-old version of, I think, what was happening in the classroom to prepare for the student, even to ensure that once they got there were some already supports in place. So certainly was encouraged to hear the 7-year-old version of what you just talked about. I do have a question. I did a quick scan of a couple policies related to foreign exchange students, student wellness, and so forth. And while we certainly don't want to standardize folks going to homes and putting playgrounds together, like that's great. But what might we want to standardize in terms of, I didn't see much in terms of social emotional well-being. So to what extent would we want to standardize some of those things that are happening in support of students in some of these situations?
So I think the going above and beyond at this point is standard. I would say our social workers do a really phenomenal job. This was just like one example of what their day-to-day looks like in supporting our families. So this isn't really an outlier. I think it's because of the amount of students that we're receiving, but even like our homeless students kind of get that red carpet treatment. Like we have coats downstairs in their offices that are branded through the Auto Dealers Association that we get every year. So that is the standard, is kind of to be able to make them feel as comfortable and supported as possible.
Thanks. And it, maybe I didn't see it, but it would be great if we communicated that as well in some of the, I think in some of the ARs, or even, I don't know if it would need to be in the policy itself, but just to communicate so that folks know whenever we see that is part of the intention and what's happening. Thanks.
Kind of piggybacking on the policy perspective, when you're talking about the child and family focus and the barriers that families were encountering. So just from a policy perspective, we do have officials that would be glad to hear from us in terms of those barriers and how to lift those to change policy. So I just offer that as an option. So.
Mr. Fishman.
Follow up on my cost of the physicians. Wondering if the students who are getting those exams that we're now paying for have either private insurance or Medicaid that might fund that. Is that something that would get it paid for without us being out of pocket?
I would have to check on that.
Yeah, it seems like it would be worth exploring if it's a decent amount of money, because the students have one or the other most likely.
Oh, I know, I'm
Go for
sorry,
it.
sorry. Two totally different questions. One, which is sort of piggybacks on the kind of financial sort of ramifications of which, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I would gladly spend, like, if we had limitless dollars, I would gladly spend limitless dollars on whatever we need for your department. I am curious about, are we seeking beyond sort of ESSER and kind of the big federal dollars, smaller grants to support some of this work?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, and is that part of your job responsibility? Okay, just trying to see where that lands, or is it Kevin or some combination?
There's already one grant through PCCD, which was mental health and security. We did apply for that. And there's another one that was just released last week from the Office of Mental Health. So we'll be applying for that one as well.
Okay, great. Because there's money out there in the hills for this kind of work. It's just
And Aldersgate is a great partner in that they are always looping me in when there are those grant opportunities.
okay, great, perfect. Okay,
Having
good.
that conversation.
Yeah, because this is definitely an area that people want to fund. the money, finding the time to apply. And then data gathering. I'm curious, do any of these programs, do we have some sort of performance evaluation criteria? Are we looking at sort of how effective they are?
So there definitely is one for the Too Good program. There's like a pre and post test that students will take for that particular program. I would say for the other initiatives, like our SAP liaisons, no, we don't necessarily have any way to track that. We just track how many students were referred and we're able to be successfully discharged.
Any other board questions? I'll ask mine. I just have a few things quickly. One, just a comment on the Black Doctors Consortium, and especially that standing order. That's huge. As a parent of a child who has she doesn't have migraines, but a migraine-like headache, that is the kind of thing that just makes life so much easier. So that's very exciting. The physicals, those are the physicals that students are required, that PDE requires them to have. That's not the sports physical. That's a different animal.
Yes.
Correct. Just that was my own clarification. And if we could, I know Ms. Haywood asked about this, but then I heard two different things, which I know was not intentional, but the slides, I think it's 13 and 14, that talk about the number of counselors, right? We all know the first column, the number of counselors, those are our full-time equivalent employees. And then on the other side, adding up, trying to, how many staff are, addressing these issues with our students. The Lakeside, I guess, depending, like the SAP liaison, for example, that person is not each school does not have their own SAP liaison every day for.
No,
right.
1 day per week.
So really, it's not like you add 1 + 2 and get 3.
You can.
Well, I mean, in one way, but like our school counselor, that person works full-time for the school district, and they are at Wincode or Myers or EP every single day, all day long, available for those students. Whereas the SAP liaison is 1 day a week.
Well, Lakeside at the high school is every day.
Okay.
Lakeside at Cedar Brook is every day except for Fridays when she goes to
To
EP.
EP.
And then EP is 2 days a week. Elementaries is 1 day.
Okay. And I think that just kind of helps paint that, for me anyway, just very clear that it's not there are 4 people, for example, 5 people touching EP students in one way or another. But that doesn't mean 40 times 5. Does that make sense? I just wanted to.
You're talking FTE, basically.
I was just trying to clarify. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the question got answered about where the SAP liaisons came from, which I had missed. So I appreciate that. And I think that was all the questions that I had at this time. Oh, one more. And this kind of follows up something that you said, Ms. Keene, talking about, I think stemming from Ms. Haywood's question, do we need more, or what would we rather have, asking the question, would we rather have folks in-house versus, outsourced and contracted? And, the idea that some of these counselors are, getting to know our students and, getting to be involved in the IEP process or other, processes. And then I'm just curious then, how does that work when they're contracted for the continuity of the student? Obviously, the student goes to a new school, you have a whole new set of everything. But, going from, 7th to 8th grade or high school, those counselors could be totally different the next year when they're contracted. That's just.
Yeah, there's no way we can really control that. I will say that our counselor at the high school, she's been there for quite some time.
Okay.
Quite some time.
So we have some folks like that it's, clearly the relationship is working. But, thank you. I appreciate it. Do we have any questions from the public? Anyone that's here with us tonight in the room? And then also anyone who is following us via Zoom, you are welcome to raise your hand and we will get you on so you can chat with us. And as a reminder, please state your name and where you reside in the township before you ask your question or share your comment.
Hi, I'm Lisa Davidson. I live in Wyncote. The slide about caseloads, Ms. Keene, like I did the math, I didn't count the fall and winter sports team, but it seems like in the high school, that shows that we serve about 6% of our population. This, I don't know what page it is, yes, Ms. Moe. Anyway, so that seems low, even though all these programs are great and these people are great. So I just, again, want to just encourage more and more and more, right? And so yes, I think Cheltenham's doing better than a lot of places, thank goodness. But we could do more. I think that those numbers look low to me. And you said like positive things, Dr. Horsey being there, so people are reaching out to her, right? So those, that's seen a familiar face. That's seen someone who lives in their community, cares about their community. And then a lot of the mental health right now, statistically, and again, I'm only speaking about statistics. I realize that's not always the best, but like 1 out of 3 high schoolers are dealing with mental health. Depression and anxiety is the biggest right now. So they might not show up in our crisis referrals, right? That I'm glad you're tracking, thank goodness. But also we're not going to catch everybody. And so I was looking at that. I'm going to email it to you all right now, that mental health report card they just started for schools, and you can look at Pennsylvania specifically. And it seems we are lacking in policies, right? So just like a mental wellness check for every student, right? That makes perfect sense, but we don't have, it's not been done because we don't have the resources. So Pennsylvania, it'll literally say like 0 policy around that, right? So I just want to advocate again, just more of our budget. I think you're a very talented person. Given more and more, you'll just do more and more, and you'll build our program and take care of our students. And yep, just, I'm always advocating for in-house versus out. It's just, and social work as well, over mental and wellness counselors, not over, just more. Because again, a wellness counselor is going to focus individual, and they have to keep in mind academic forward moving, right? Social worker can take from every aspect that's in this kid's life and doesn't have to be focused only on academics. Anyways, I think that was it. So I'm going to email you all that now because I found it very helpful. It's brand new this year. And then just again, everything was exacerbated over the past decade, and it's worse with COVID. We do have ESSER funds to spend. Montgomery County Recovery Office supposedly sending money to school districts that apply to fund mental health supports in school. And then we aren't reaching statistically. No school is really, I don't think there's many in the whole country that are reaching what is recommended to address the needs of our kids. So yes, I'm proud of our school and proud of our kids, and just think we can do more and more. Thank you for your presentation. And thank you for working on strategic planning.
Thank you. Any other questions? Would it be possible to go back to the caseload slide? Yes, that was slide 8. I think you were talking about the high school.
Specific.
This isn't necessarily caseload, just the number of students referred to the program.
Okay. So that touches roughly 6%, right? So we just would want to, by expand our programs, we're going to reach more kids that aren't always necessarily more basic. I'm fine with it.
I need to leave, but I'm gonna sign on via Zoom.
Thank you. Are there any questions online, Dr. Ali?
No questions.
Can I ask one more really quick? I just jogged my memory when it came back up. The Healthy Relationships Program, you said that's with Cheltenham, Laurel House, and families that are
Communities that care.
too many, there's so many places. And that sounds awesome. And I know Laurel House does great work, and that's exciting. Is there a reason, is that program designed specifically for athletes, or that was just the way we?
It was the forum that we kind of utilized it. We've done it in the past with Victim Services Center.
Okay.
And so as we wanted to introduce it this year, we wanted to use the same form. It's a little bit easier to figure out after school when they're on the sports team and made to go.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that. I just was curious because it's certainly something that, like, so many of these things.
Expand upon it, but like as we kind of get rolling with this again, I feel like this would be the best way to introduce it.
No, that was just curiosity. Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other questions? If not, we will move on to our next presentation. But thank you so much, Ms. Keene. A lot of information to digest, a lot of great questions, and lots of great work happening and more work to continue to happen. So thank you again. Are you introducing?
Yeah, may I respectfully ask if the board on this side of the room can move down so we can leave 2 empty seats for our
Absolutely.
representatives?
Yeah.
Over. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Smith to introduce our next presentation and speaker.
Yes.
Shuffle that.
Yeah, you can.
You can actually just.
Once again, it's Kingdom moment, so.
Oh, absolutely. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, that was great. So good evening, everyone. Our second presentation tonight is to introduce some and to familiarize others with our Student Ambassadors Program. Today, I'm presenting on behalf of tonight's presentation for this program. We have our student, Mia Cruz from Cheltenham High School, and we also have our consultant, Ms. Carmina Taylor, who will facilitate the presentation. And I will also aid in answering any questions that the board or the community may have once they're finished. So with that, I turn everything over to Ms. Cruz and also Ms. Taylor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carmina. Thank you, Dr. Smith, for the introduction. So for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been involved with the school district. And I'm just very pleased. I sit here right now and I look at Mia and my heart just putters because this program has really grown and the student ambassadors have really grown. And it's been because of the work that we've consistently done. So if we go to the next slide, when the Student Ambassadors Program was first envisioned, it was really about equipping students, first of all, aligning cultural proficiency work that you were doing within the school and giving your students the opportunity to kind of pair up with what you were doing in school. And we wanted to equip them with the knowledge and skill sets. And then we wanted to also expose them to social justice opportunities and rights so they could combine the two. And we started out the first year with 4 school districts. Cheltenham took the lead, and we had Upper Dublin, North Penn, and Norristown. And the first couple years, it was in 2019, and we officially launched it in 2020, literally 2.5 weeks before COVID hit. But what has always been the anchor are your students and their resilience. And by, as school districts were making adjustments to COVID, by the summertime in the next school year, your students were asking questions about all the things that were happening around our city and our state from that summer. And so we felt like we had to find opportunities to cultivate their intrigue and still validate their concerns and explain it. So as we dealt with the issues that came around that, we can go to the next slide. We realized that we needed to do something. So overall, since 2019, we've had an average of 18 to 24 Cheltenham students that have participated. I think it was a couple of years ago where I lost about 12 seniors, and it just broke my heart because they were my babies, actually. And we have grown this year. So as I said, in 2019, at best, we had 4 school districts, and we tiered at 50 to 70 students with the 4. Again, Cheltenham was taking the lead. When we lost all the seniors from those other schools, we realized that we needed to harness in on the students that we had, but also expand. So in the spring of 2021, we added 4 more school districts, Abington, Hatboro, Horsham, Upper Moreland, and Lower Moreland. And at our peak, we had 100 students on Zoom. That was really interesting. But 80 to 100. And what we've also had to do, we first started out meeting during the day at schools, but then when COVID hit, we had to do virtual. And then when you were going back into the 5-day, all day, we had to do hybrid. We had to be creative because we couldn't also do in-person during the day because of various transportation, lack of transportation resources with the other school districts. So we've been constantly making adjustments, but still trying to make sure that the programming and the substance has been consistent. And one of the things I'm really, really proud of with Cheltenham at best is Jordan Harris. He's a senior this year. He has been with me since he was a freshman. And he has really helped all the other students come along and help them flourish. And I think that's part of the value and the uniqueness of this school district. I forgot to say that when I first got involved in this, I was doing educational equity work. And my belief at that time was that if Cheltenham produced a policy that had a policy that had a practice and a measurement, well, an implementable policy that creates a practice to yield outcomes, then it takes race out of the equation because you have a predominantly school district of color. And I got involved because I really felt that this could be the standard and the model for the rest of the county, because we have so many other school districts that don't have your numbers. And so that takes away from this whole premise that education equity is about race. It's really about providing access for students to thrive at their potential. So I wanted to say that. If we go to the next slide, you know, I talked to the kids last month. We had a leadership retreat. And I utilized this picture because I really felt like where we are 4 years later, the big picture is the reality. Number one is that this school district is the leading school district in the county that's been doing this work so infallibly. But I look at this as we started, we're the roots, right? Our students in our 8 school districts and the work that we've been doing, and we can only flourish by the continued work and effort to educate and expand other people. So we're the roots, this is the tree, and the potential is all the things that we can yield off of the roots. And I just wanted to just share that with you because, again, I'm sitting here looking at all of you, and some of you I started out with, and I'm even Dr. Smith, and it's just, we've come a long way. We really have come a long way. So to fast forward where we are today, if we go to the next slide, what I'm most proud of, and I remember when Noah Groshaw was here, you guys afforded opportunities for these students to engage with you that no other school district in the county did. You allowed them to have town halls that specifically directly talked to the students, let them facilitate the conversation. And from there, I always wanted the Cheltenham student ambassadors to have greater opportunities to facilitate dialogue, to facilitate discussion, to do a lot of inquiries. So as you see here, because you guys allowed the students to have town halls, we were able to, when we did the last longing survey, actually have them glean the results and move from there. And what's interesting about the longing survey, which is I always say PSSM because I'm in it, but the psychological sense of school membership, you guys have been doing it for a while, but we are the only conglomerate, the only cohort of school districts that are part of Penn's program that have students helping analyze the data and coming out that we're the only. And that's important because when Mia gets to talk to you about her experience, that's another example of how our students are just flourishing. So you guys have done 3 years of assessments, and Mia, why don't you tell them what we did last year and how it ended?
Hi guys, I'm Mia Cruz, I'm a senior. So last year with the 8th graders, we created a presentation that basically summarized the extracurricular activities, sports, everything that we have to offer at the high school. And we also touched on honors and AP courses. And unfortunately, although we are predominantly, our students are predominantly people of color, we don't have the same representation in our honors and AP classes. So right now, our main goal that the ambassadors are currently working on, when we noticed that last year when we visited Cedar Brook, we're creating a mentorship program where people like me, Sydney, and other members of the ambassador group, we're going to, mentor these kids and tell them that this is a safe and comfortable space and that we need to increase this representation. So we're also going to do that again this year. And then it's also where we're going to introduce our mentorship program. And then next we have.
After that, what did you do after you had the presentation? Then you had your town hall. Why did you have the town hall?
Yes, so we had the town hall as a result of the UPenn belonging survey. So basically we found a lot of concerning data points, and the three main points that we found was lack of school community, lack of student motivation, and lack of respect between student-teacher relationships. And we basically left the floor open to student and teachers to kind of voice how they felt, and it was really nice to kind of see that communication. Teachers obviously felt their emotions, the students did, and it was like, I feel like it kind of created like a healthy atmosphere of just having that conversation. And what we did with that is we presented that at a Senate hearing.
So the PA Senate Democratic Committee had an exclusive opportunity for all of our student ambassadors to present their findings of the belonging survey in June. And Mia represented Shelby.
So I was able to talk to the senators, which was so awesome. And so basically, it was a bunch of other school districts that we also work with in the ambassadors group. So, just seeing everything that's going on within those schools and finding solutions for each other. And we have a new principal this year who implemented the community lunch. And so we see there like an increase of people being, included in these extracurricular activities. So it's really nice to see that growth. But as far as this year, we are conducting another belonging survey to see exactly the statistics behind that, like to see what really has been increasing. So me and Elijah Litka, we went to a UPenn Belonging Community Partner meeting last December. Yeah, it was end of December. And basically we were collaborating with like superintendents and directors from other districts.
If I could share that, because I want to talk about how proud I was again. So what that was is Penn has now started with this new cohort of school districts. All the representatives from school districts of New Jersey and in Montgomery County came to a meeting as partners to discuss. My Cheltenham student ambassadors were the only students there articulating all of the benefits of what they gained from that process. And it was just beautiful because Mia ran off a lot of statistics and gave a lot of perspectives, and so did Eli. But everyone was so impressed that they had a command of the information, the purpose of the survey, and how they gave a really good student perspective. I would like to reiterate that no other school district are having kids actually help analyze or be a part of the results-driven process. And it was evident of that. And as a result of that, the Penn person is going to be a mentor for Mia to go on further as to what we're going to do to develop this year's survey and how we move on. But I was just really, really proud of you. I say that to her all the time, but it was just really gratifying because all the seeds are being planted. And again, Cheltenham took the lead. So what was your experience like being there?
Wow, it was so cool. It was like, I'm a teenager, they're adults, so it was like, I felt. But yeah, it was
That's true here too also.
it was a really nice experience. There was a representative from a Catholic school there, so it was just like a bunch of different perspective of exactly what's going on in their school. Because the most interesting thing to me was that we each have our own problems in the school district. So hearing what their problem is, and I think I forget which school district it is, but their problem is with the LGBTQ community, inclusion with that, and for us it's like school community. So I don't know.
Just hearing the different perspectives.
Just hearing the different
The other
perspectives.
stuff. But again, they wanted the students to come back and be part of that. So Penn is making intentional efforts to have these community conversations of all the other school districts that come from different aspects of education to talk about how the PCSM survey is impacting or influencing the other, but they were very encouraged by the students speaking because most of the ones that have been there for 2 or 3 years, they're still talking to administrators, they're still talking amongst themselves and sifting through how they actually facilitate change on that end is very different when you're getting a perspective from a student that's been a part of the whole process. So if we go to the next slide. I asked the kids, why is this work important? And for you guys, why the continued why? So we knew when we first started out that getting the student sense of belonging would always give us a better sense of how we need to work with them and how we need to improve their condition. So that was the present why. And the current why is that, and I see Mia and Eli and Jordan, Sydney, all of them, just the things that we keep planning is just evident that we need to keep edifying their mind, still planning the skill sets, still equipping them with things that they can take beyond that and ultimately transfer to their peers. In Cheltenham in particular, one of the things that we did this year that added to our specific objectives here at Cheltenham is we finally had a meeting with CAAA. And they had a how long were you guys on that call? I mean, it was long. We had a conversation with CAAA, but it was very good because they asked questions of the students. They asked, how can we help? How can we be a resource? What does that mean? Da, 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 da. And so what we're hoping to do is, oh no, we forgot. We're gonna do an event, a community event. So one of the things that I have graduated from making realistic outcomes is we're going to have each school district will have a school project. The Cheltenham students decided to bring back their cultural their Heritage Day that they had when they were in elementary school. We're going to do it at the high school, but we're calling it what in the world? Commendations, cultural commendations. What is this?
Commemoration.
Culture, that's what cultural commemoration. So it's like a revival of that Heritage Day, but now we're going to include parents and parents in CAAA and high school parents. And one of the fun things that we did is we went to I braved the cold with them for the last game of the senior football game. We literally went out there with a sign-in sheet for parents to sign up to be part of the cultural accommodations day, commemoration. And I gotta give a shout out to your athletic director. He gave us some old vintage t-shirts. We were able to use that as a ploy to bring in the parents. They got a t-shirt if they signed up. So,
And he got to clean out the closet probably.
yeah, he did. We had a very big tote, but we did it in the cold. I came very underdressed. But I hung in there, and we're gonna also be at the senior game in the basketball, the senior night at the basketball game to try to recruit more parents. So the future for Cheltenham is now integrating what we're doing and building off of the belonging survey, the school project, bringing in all aspects of community stakeholders. Can we go to the next one? Now, each year I try to encapsulate a theme. This year is kind of unique because, and believe it or not, I was on a train ride from Southwestern PA going to DC. Somebody heard me talking about the Student Ambassadors Program. So this woman came up to me and she said, listen, I'm from the UK. I have this new platform. I want to give it to you so your students can be a part of it. I mean, it was incredible. So this year we're focusing on, in terms of skill building with the students with the belonging survey, is really trying to prove that it's about improvement science, using it as a method of really gleaning more anecdotal stuff to get a real sense of where students are. But the second one here, collective intelligence. So there's this woman named Georgina Dennis from London, and she's developed a platform sort of like Zoom, but it gives the ability for 500 people to be in a room, and it automatically synthesizes by the questions that you ask It synthesizes the conversation in the room to get a collective intelligence piece. So the app is called People Supported Intelligence. We offered an opportunity for our student ambassadors and our Cheltenham student ambassadors to be trained in PCPSI. So we're going to equip the students to learn how to do this software so they can facilitate their own conversations. So like when you're usually in a breakout room in Zoom, somebody has to take notes of what everybody's saying. She has a system that it takes notes for you. And what it does is it yields the collective intelligence in the room. Powerful. And she's doing it for us for free. And what she actually was in the United States for, she was going to DC because the police department in DC wants to use her platform. And then she's invited some of me to London to participate in her work with policing in the Black community there. So this year our theme is Improvement Science, Collective Intelligence. And I wrote a grant for the Student Ambassadors Program through the V&A Foundation of Greater North Penn. I got it. We're doing racial literacy dialogue circles, but it's out of North Penn. North Penn Student Ambassadors will be training and equipping the other student ambassadors about racial literacy, Peterson thing. So those are our major 3 themes this year. If we go to the last slide. We have some exciting stuff in partnerships. That's another component that I've added this year with the Student Ambassador Program for a year and a half. I've been talking to one of the staff members in the Motko Center at Penn, and we're going to do something related to Black History Month. If you could walk in my shoes, we're going to do a dialogue discussion about that. And then in March, we're going to do a discussion about why women and why now for Women's History Month. I'm pleased to also share that we will be working with the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus in their 50th anniversary on May 23rd. So the whole goal is to have the students at least be able to present their school projects to each other in April and prepare to share with the state in May. So as we build off of all of these things, we want to really strengthen what we do with the parents and your school community stakeholders after next year. I haven't seen your strategic plan stuff in a long time. I don't know where you're at, but we can certainly insert ourselves. I just want you to know that these students stand out all the time in any space that they're in. And I can't thank the district enough for giving us this opportunity and being a leader. And we are definitely leading the other school districts. Everybody's in a different place, but this has been constant and the kids have flourished. And she's an example of Jordan feeding into her, and Sydney's an example of me feeding into her, and Brian Cherry and everyone else. And I just couldn't have had a greater moment when you share all that information in that room, and that really showed that you really have been working with Ms. Carmina, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity. So I'm here for any questions, and thank you, Dr. Smith. I tell you that Dr. Smith always is so responsive to me, either through text or whatever, and I appreciate that as well, being accessible.
Yeah, thank you guys. Like I said last week on a video I made for the School Board Appreciation Week.
We love the video.
Thank you for hearing us.
And you guys definitely stand apart. Some of you know me, I'm out in Montgomery all the time. There is no other school district in this county that has opened the doors that you have for your students. No other school district. I'm here for any questions.
So before we take any questions, I just wanted to thank
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Taylor and also thank Mia for being here tonight and at Affairs, January year 2023, getting started. So I'm going to turn things back over to Ms. Mulhorn and Ms. Lohman to field questions.
I hope we have some questions.
Oh, question. Thank you so much, Ms. Gill and Mia, Ms. Cruz. It was fantastic. It was so great to hear from both of you. And it's not often that we get the pleasure of having a student present to us at a committee meeting. So that's super exciting, and hopefully not the last time that happens either. I will turn it over to the board for any questions or comments they may have. Strips.
Certainly encouraged by again.
Cool, Miss
Oh,
Sid.
yes.
Yeah, come on.
Sydney, was
You
you
guys
out
are
of phone with me too, or there for phone?
Yeah, that is a good t-shirt though.
Thank
what-
you,
what's-
thank you, Sid.
What's your name for the Sydney? So everyone who's attending, and what grade? What grade? 12th grade. Okay, so we have two seniors in the house tonight.
So Carmina, you can always.
I'm really emotional. So,
So again, thank you both for all the work that you are doing. When we talk about probably the single most important thing we can deal with as a society is how we treat each other, is certainly about race. We live in a racially structured society. And so the work that you are doing is important, is inspiring, is good. So I recall, as you were talking, I looked back at my notes from the town hall, and I know there were a few things that were talked about in terms of wanting to see at the school, but even what are opportunities for students in terms of leadership and ongoing. And so before I ask a question, I've got to say kudos to Principal Jimmy DeAndrea. I have yet to find anyone who has, everyone says positive things about Principal DeAndrea, so I've got to give a shout out as well to him again, and the leadership that he's provided for the school. But there were some very clear things that students were like, okay, can this happen? Why were certain things happening at the school, and how can students continue to have a voice? And so in the strategic planning process, like some of those things are important. All of those things are important. And so I wonder if you mentioned, not to make a formal request, but I'm wondering what of those things would be helpful to know as we think about belonging and what to do about belonging and inclusion in our schools. So are those like lists, is it somewhere that could be shared, or like an update, like what still needs to happen along those things? But just wondering.
So we're trying to conduct another town hall, and we're gonna compare like basically the notes that we took during the past town hall. The last town hall was a little chaotic because we didn't really, touch with the students who were speaking beforehand. So there was a bunch of irrelevant questions like busing issues, like that has nothing to do with us. So it's just like, I guess there's like new problems that have surfaced in our school community that isn't necessarily related to like the work that we started on last year. So yeah, I feel like.
but explain how you felt that the principal addressed the sense of school community.
Yes, there has been an increase in our school community, so I'm hoping that those numbers also increase. But like I said, there's other problems that have surfaced that, will probably be talked about we'll probably have to shift our focus.
Thanks.
Okay, just because it tags on that, will the next town hall be before or after the belonging survey takes place? Or will it be after? It'll be so similar to last year.
Yeah, because we're gonna
you get
compare
all
the
the
data.
data.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see what.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you both for being here. Thank you very much. In terms of the belonging survey, are there like standard questions that are asked every year?
Yes.
Okay, so the
It's
information.
18 basics. And then what the students do is they take the trends or the similarities and the patterns, and they decide which are the priorities. But okay, I'm sorry.
So we actually sat down with our school psychologist, Nicole Warren, and we talked to her about like the questions that consisted in the belonging survey from like the psychologist's perspective. We really try to like not like read, because basically the survey, I feel like when I took it, it was asking the same questions over and over again. And not that it was repetitive, because like the different questions was giving you a different response and answer from the students, but more like, so when I went to the Penn meeting, we tried to ask if we could change the questions, some of the questions around, so we could get like more of a direct answer. But it's standard and it's gonna continue to be the same 18. And I guess that's the best, so we can get like good comparative data. So yeah, it doesn't change.
When you look at the data from the belonging survey, do you try to cluster it into patterns or issues or concerns?
Yeah, so when we took a look at the data, our three main points were the lack of school community, lack of student motivation, and lack of respect between teachers and students. So that's basically the three general themes that we got out of it. And yeah, so that's what we try to focus on. 'Cause I don't know.
Because those ended up being the three things that came up in the same kind of category. So they were able to put those main areas together based on some of the open-ended questions.
And if I remember correctly, you guys also had some recommendations during that, because I remember that some of us were able to attend, so we were just listening. So you actually started with those main themes, but you also came up with recommendations. Have you seen any of those recommendations kind of turn into action?
So I have to say, I think our faculty and like our staff did an amazing job with that. They implemented like an on-roll brunch and like student of the month recognition. So I think students are feeling more motivated now that the teachers are getting more involved and there's more level of respect between teachers and students. So
That's great. My last question in terms of the honors and AP. So you're mentoring Cedarbrook students and encouraging them to take honors and AP classes when they get to the high school? Okay. And have you found that there have been more students who are willing to do that? Because student to student is way more powerful, I think.
So, did you get the data for this year? From the new, we can get that to you. I can't recall at the top of my head, but we're definitely gonna try to track it. I mean, they made a tremendous impact when they went there. And one of the things that they all told all the students their experience of being in there and having the courage, right, to take courses that may seem challenging. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, going to the eighth graders was an elevation from Noah and the other young lady from coming to the town hall meetings. So by them reaching out and talking to the eighth graders, it gave them another sense of why they're important in the big picture, what they have experienced as students from elementary to middle school, and how they would want to have better exposure and opportunity, someone to talk to them early. It takes a lot of coordination, and I think that we have to keep at it. Certainly working with Craig and figuring out other ways to track it is challenging. Listen, let me tell you something. I tell all the admins associated with this, I couldn't do this every day. I couldn't do it. And because there's so many things that, you have to entail to keep up on what's really going. So this is just like a bonus. And they have rigorous courses themselves. And with a good majority of these current group being seniors, this fall has been difficult because they've been applying to so many schools for early admission. So we're clearly weighing. What I'll do is I'll make sure you get the data, the sheet that we created with the gleaning points, the recommendations, and maybe a copy of your a copy of her testimony at the center, because that was the blueprint of the kind of areas that they wanted to go through now. So we can get all that to you, and we'll ask who actually came in. Now I want to say for you guys too, I just think it's amazing that you have an AP 9th grade geography. I brag about that to all the resident superintendents. Because it can be done. And just the fact that they brought it up. And one of the other things that they did, not only with the AP honors, they talked about participating in clubs and sports, right? Mia, you're president of the, she is president of a lot of things, but they gave their experiences in leadership in other than academic stuff and encouraging them to blend it all in. So there was a great mix of people that came from different facets of making really solid choices. And they emphasized taking advantage of the 9th grade, right?
yes. So I do want to say that I think why our work is so important, and like my team particularly, is because we're all very involved students. So when we look at these data points, it's not representing us. So my team consists of students who take honors in AP, and I'm president of whatever. I'm not going to brag, but it's like, yeah. So it's like, I guess when I'm saying that I've seen an increase in school community, it's from like a leadership standpoint where like I see more kids coming into the clubs, but I don't really know how that looks like from an outsider's lens. I don't know how to word this, but I'm not in those numbers of like low motivation and like lacking in school community, like that's not me, you know? So it's like seeing this new data come in, like I really hope to see an increase in numbers, but for me talking, I can't say that there's definitely been an increase in school community because that's not the case for every student.
I appreciate your honesty. Thank you. Mr. Fishman.
I just can't hold in my desire to praise you guys, because to hear what you're living, how aware you are of the community you live in. And one of my questions is going to be, it's been answered already, can we see the testimony? Can we see the report that was given at the UPenn conference? Those are things that this board been on for going on 8 years. This is the essence of everything else we care a lot about. This is our central desire, to see this kind of progress.
Absolutely.
To see the kind of work that you're doing translating to improved numbers, hopefully. I mean, if we can see the next survey and we can say for sure that there were things X, Y, and Z were implemented, and as a result, these numbers got better, not worse, there's nothing better for us.
But I think what Mia just said was really amazing, guys. She recognizes in her space, right, that her nucleus is fine, but she wants to make sure that other students that don't have the exposure that she has or the involvement that she has, that's powerful. That's she
noted.
has.
I heard that, and I was
Okay, I was re-noting it.
And so I can tell you, because he's my neighbor, that Noah Goschel is thriving in college.
He is thriving.
And yeah.
But he was always gonna thrive.
And the impact that,
Absolutely.
to see that his impact
Absolutely.
is continuing.
Absolutely.
This year now, it's all great.
Absolutely. And that's what I mean about each year. The Cheltenham students have flourished. And then Noah came back. He was present and being supportive at the town hall.
Thank you. Just a big thank you. And I'd love to see those two, the testimony and the presentation.
This is sort of an odd question, but I'm thinking of some of the numbers that you had shared with the board retreat. Have you all, the two of you, been in Cheltenham since kindergarten?
I've been here since 2nd grade, Ms. Myers.
Okay, and how long?
I've been here since 8th grade. I actually moved from Jersey.
Okay.
From where?
I'm in Jersey.
I asked that question because we've seen some numbers that show that kids who have been in the district for all or almost all, like yourself, Mia, on the whole, generally tend to fare better, sort of at least academically, than kids who kind of come in and come out of the district, especially at the high school level. And I don't know if that has come up at all in any of your discussions in terms of belonging.
I can see that. I mean, it makes sense. You know, you're coming into this space. For some people, it may be a culture shock because of the diversity that Cheltenham has to offer. But also for some, it could be switch. You know, you're coming into a suburban neighborhood now, depending on what area you're coming from. And I'm a tour guide for like new students that come in. So, you know, most of the time it's like Northeast High School and just a bunch of schools from the Philly area. So it's like there's kind of a culture shock for them with how our school system works compared to theirs. So I can see that. And that would be really interesting.
I think you probably put it on the job, but I will do that. I'm going to ask the current Cheltenham student ambassadors how many have been here since kindergarten.
I'd be curious.
Sure.
Early elementary. Thank you.
Mr. Badali.
Yeah, really, thank you. Really enjoyed hearing from you all. Remember when you had your initial meetings and all of the great press that we had in the district around it. It's great to again get a very current update. One of the questions, actually the only question I have, because you guys have been fielding a lot of questions about this, but you know, I'm curious because I know that what we're discussing is how this works at the high school, right? And my thought is, you know, thinking about, you know, the role that I played on the culture and climate and like student belonging arm of our strategic plan, and one of the components of that was around belonging surveys. And the big question that came up for us as a bunch of adults was actually how do you ask these same questions for like fourth graders or for someone who, again, isn't in AP honors class of whether it's world history or whatnot in high school, but how do we ask these same questions in fifth grade, right? Because our students, come from, their individual school communities as similar as they are, but also as different as they are when you come from Glenside or Myers or Cheltenham and Wyncote, and then you end up at EP together, right? That's when, you will be together for the entirety of the rest of the time in the district, but that is when the school community starts to change a lot, right? And understanding what that looks like then, like thinking about it in ninth grade, not to the point of it being too late almost, but when do we start the process? And so my thought are just around how we could ask some of those same questions that you guys are answering in high school for our, maybe fourth or fifth graders when they're beginning the transition to the larger school community. And I'm just curious if that exists, if you guys have heard of it, or if there's anything out there.
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, the UPenn is actually trying to expand it to elementary school students.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, Dr. Smith, in your experience, have you, because in my experience with Penn, they've allowed the school districts to determine how they unveil their belonging survey. So from my exposure, they've only done middle school and high school, but it's at the school district's discretion. Have you heard of anything with Penn doing it younger than middle school?
So no one's done it younger than middle school. We've talked about doing it at EP just because of the way our school district is configured. Because a lot of schools have their sixth graders in middle school.
Right.
And our sixth graders here are kind of in a upper elementary model. So we have discussed that with them. The only reason why we haven't opened it up to EP yet is because we kind of did this trickle down effect. We started with the high school 1 year, then we added Cedar Brook, and so the next layer is to add EP. But we absolutely wanted to vet through the data and also to think about programming to give our families and our parents ways to respond to what comes out of the survey and what the next steps will be. But yes, we are going to go down because unlike most school districts, we don't have our sixth grade and middle school, and most of those other ones do, which is why it seems like we're going much younger than everyone else, but we really aren't, because most schools, when they say middle school, they start with sixth grade.
And so one of the things when a school district takes on Penn's program, you kind of have to follow their standards, right? So what I think I'll also do is I'll talk to Meg to see how they would facilitate if you as a district decide you want to go there and keep their system, because one of the values of this is the way that they're able to help us glean the data and interpret it. They go into all these different charts, but I think Penn would have to answer that question as to how they would do it. And I don't remember, but maybe they are for fostering it to cater to younger, because the reality is it goes back to the improvement science thing. We, from what Meg is teaching me, is that we have to stop getting away completely with just hardcore data and look at that anecdotal stuff or how we frame the anecdotal stuff to glean more of what's really happening. So that's the whole key now, that we're moving away from the mindset that this is just a necessarily belonging survey, but it's improvement science on the issues. And so I'm learning with her about that process, but I made a note to ask Meg. I'll just see, what's in line, because it really makes a lot more sense. And understand that part of why we're doing this as well, and why we're exposing the students to statewide opportunities, because we want to influence the state. We want to influence public education in other places. We want to influence other school districts to take the chance to really go through this process to really get a handle of where our kids are, the mental health issues. Belonging is that whole emphasis of how they feel and how they respond if they don't feel like they belong. But you're not going to get that from numbers. You're going to get that from listening to them and cleaning them and getting their responses. So I made a note to ask Meg, and I'll skip to Dr. Smith.
I appreciate it, because I do, again, surveys are, anytime you see a survey or even thinking about standardized testing, but I'm not gonna go there at this moment, but like, how do we ask age appropriate
Right.
questions, right? And, maybe it's about drawing pictures and drawing references to things, again, that might feel anecdotal, but in reality,
Sure.
reflect the way a younger student feels, but also is very, relative to their ability to express it, right?
Absolutely.
But I think the answers to the questions are important,
Absolutely.
at least from my perspective, for our district, right? Because we do want to understand everyone's perspective, and we have test data all over, and we try to make informed decisions about what we do there. But I think equally as important as the work that we're doing, try to understand if our students really enjoy their experience, or if they feel like the school is working with them, for them, or is a place where they feel like they belong. So certainly interested in if there's some models out there, or even if this model is.
Right, and then the beauty of it is, as a partner with Penn and the Catalyst, the administrators get to work with them to figure out how you cater it to your school district. So that would be something that Dr. Smith would be working with Penn anyway on how to facilitate it for your needs.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanna, just real quick, Sid and Mayor, if you guys can also tap into Jordan or anybody else from your leadership team. President Henry hopefully will be out on Friday. We've had to reschedule a couple times with student government to kind of talk about town hall. I think you guys should be at the table for that as well. So if you want to say something to Principal DeAndrea, I will also mention it to him. But your perspective is definitely necessary. So just try to, I know your schedules are very complex.
No, I'll talk.
Okay.
Mia always finds a way.
No,
She'll find a way.
I just think it's for me to
It's
follow.
just Tuesday, right? She'll get it in by Friday.
Ms. Halen.
I just wanted to invite you as well. So there's every year an advocacy day up in Harrisburg, and I don't know if it's going to be virtual again this year. It's actually going to be in Harrisburg. I don't have the date, but it's normally around a Pennsylvania School Boards Association, typically 3 issues, and I don't know what those issues will be this year. But it would be fabulous to have students be part of that conversation. It's an opportunity to talk to your elected officials, and again, it's typically around certain issues, but it doesn't mean that other issues can't be brought up in the process. And the goal is, if any of those issues really lead to suggested policy changes or suggested proposed legislation, it's really an opportunity to really talk to your elected officials one-on-one or their staff. At times we also meet up with other school districts, and we're combined in those discussions with the elected officials as well. So it would be great to have students accompany school board directors to those meetings.
Thank you.
I believe it's April 18th this year. So my calendar says that.
Right.
But any other board comments or questions? Anyone who's in the room with us or online? I don't know if we have any other questions. I know it's getting late. But no, don't apologize. We're off here with great attention. So don't, Ms. Anderson.
Just to tell you, me and Sydney, prior to coming to this meeting, friends were sending me this Facebook discussion going on about, my family moved from Bucks County to Cheltenham, and like all the nasty comments, right? And just one of them sticking out about, oh, it's too close to Philadelphia. And just like, shouldn't get emotional. Here you are saying like, how do I make my community adapt to kids coming from Philadelphia? How do I make them feel like they're part of this community? And then, there's adults who've never even seen here, right? And they have nasty things to say. And they spent like 5 minutes listening to you instead of 2 hours on Facebook. I'm just very thankful for you, proud of you. Good luck going out there, whatever you're gonna do. And thank you.
I definitely see them Facebook discussions. My parents are, we like to scroll through and laugh.
Just scroll. That's
I think for me, I'm Hispanic, and my family lives in Philadelphia. So seeing you know, the gap between me and my cousins, and, you know, their schools don't offer AP and honor. So, you know, for me, I think I'm just trying to be the role model for them. And, you know, with these new kids coming into Stoneham from Philadelphia, like I said, I'm a new student guide. So Miss Vargas usually signs me to a student, and then like I'll give them a tour and, you know, my number. If you ever need to talk to someone, if you need someone to hang out with, you know, just, you know, trying to make the community more welcome, because I feel like they're a little bit, I feel like what people don't realize is like, probably like, oh, well, Stoneham students might feel threatened, but they feel just as threatened from, you know, being in this community, because it's not anything that they're used to. They're not used to these AP and honors classes. They don't know what they are. So I guess our work here is just, you know, raising more awareness and, you know, bringing more inclusion. So.
Thank you so much, Mia. That is everything has been very powerful, and I know that I'm not alone when I say that we appreciate it. If you could also let us know when that cultural commemorations, I'm like, what did I write down? When that is, because I know that sounds like something that some of us might be interested in checking out.
It's an April.
But I think that we could probably talk all night, but I think that's probably not the best idea. But again, thank you so much, Ms. Taylor, Sydney, Mia, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Smith, for coordinating. And if I can have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second.
Second.
Okay, great.
Yeah.